everybody, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me is my Lollipop Man co-host,
General Cornwallis to you.
I said Lollipop Man.
General Cornwallis to you.
General Lollipop Man, Cornwallis. The 9 most terrifying words is, I'm here for the government and I'm here to help. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That was Ronald Reagan. We're sitting here today, Franklin County Board of Supervisors meeting. We're sitting out front, and we're hoping to get some people to come by and jump on here and give us some clarity, some people to jump on and say this, say that. Real quick, just shout out to Rocky Mountain Burger Company. They're a major sponsor for us, do a lot of good things for us tonight. We're missing it, but they're having a party for Henry Law, and our buddy Rick Reeves are having a watch party down there because Rick is going to be on Moonshiners this week. I hate to miss that. So if you ever get a chance, we actually went there for the Valentine's Day a couple weeks ago for their dinner, and it was phenomenal. We had Simon Amos, our buddy Chip from Being Libertarian, showed up. All of our wives. It was a good time. Big shout out to them. And of course, Rocky Mountain Smokehouse, Spike Co. and You Are the Power and everything. Jump right into it. Our first person we got here is a familiar face to the show, Jonah Deborde. He's
Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah.
God almighty, why I said Jonah outside? Why the hell didn't you
brother of?
I didn't hear you.
Okay, well, somebody should have showed Jeremiah. I mix y'all up all the time. Don't forgive me. But so why were you here today?
Well, if I tell everyone to come by the Board of Supervisors and I don't show up, then I kind of wanted to see who would show up with this reassessment and everything, and also with the county wanting to zone the no-zoned area, I was hoping there would be a little more discussion on that or public comment, because on all the socials, everyone's all upset about it. But as you see here tonight, everyone complained about online does not necessarily mean they show up. So,
yeah, that's the engagement that's actually going to detract from the issue, as far as I'm concerned. You know, apathy, unfortunately, in this situation, really is something we can ill afford. So it's a bit disappointing to see a poorer turnout than the last meeting that was just a hearing. So, you know, the word hearing and how else do they describe where public comment is? You know, I don't know if we've got people to spend their energy prematurely. I don't know. Disappointing.
I don't think people are too concerned about it, frankly. Even with the reassessment, I mean, the taxes aren't going to go up. They're not going to go up the full amount of the assessments. But however, it's still affecting people's bottom dollars. So therefore, they need to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, as I said, you know, if we're looking at a net neutral with no increase in tax, we'd be looking at a new rate of maybe 41 cents.
Which I believe is what Bedford is at.
But when you consider the significant increase in assessments, that's appropriate. So you've got to look at a reduction in the rate, but I don't think we're going to see a 41, 42 cent rate applied. I think we're going to see something in the region of anywhere between 47 and 49 cents, which actually accounts for the lack of increase that hasn't been applied in the last 4 years, which I think has been a tactical mistake for the Board of Supervisors. But, you know, at this point, that's water under the bridge, right?
Well, one thing, in talking with people, a lot of people's assessments went up well above market value.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was very arbitrary. You know, we know that the way they've calculated, we had a chap speak with us at length from the assessment company that's been doing this, and he was very articulate.
And he'll be on the show here. We're going to share that interview as well.
But nonetheless, it still strikes me as being an arbitrary number when you consider the tax rates applied to Water's Edge.
Waterfront.
Well, to touch back on what he said a minute ago, he said that the tax rate won't go up to match how high the assessment went.
No, of course
I took that to mean that the assessments went up on average 55% across the county, And that's exactly the way I interpreted the board to say that, to sell that at the February 8th meeting was, we're sure taxes will go up. We don't know. We've not seen the budget, so we don't know how much they're going to go up, but they'll definitely go up. Surely they will, but it won't be 55%, not to worry. So as to then present us with this giant favor that they're not going to go up 55%. The state guidelines suggestion, if you will, calls for a 1% increase based upon the reassessment.
Yeah, reassessment.
So to me, it looks like that first we have an extra high reassessment, and everybody's scared to death that their taxes are going to go up 155%. Now we're the board. We're here to save the day. We're going to cut you this big giant break, and we're only going to raise your taxes. The effective rate's only going to be 15% higher than it was last year. I'm not necessarily arguing that we shouldn't raise taxes, but I will have to contend with what appears to be between $40 and $60 million in the bank. That's a third of the year's budget. For any business ever, having 3 months reserve is a healthy reserve. So some reserve is good, but I don't see that we're trimming any fat. We're not making any move. If the problem is we're short on money, we're not making any move to say, hey, school board, have you trimmed the pork out of your budget before you presented it to us?
Well,
or facilities?
One thing that I think it's also kind of coincidental that they're talking about closing 2 to 3 schools, and at the same time, everyone's pushing back against a tax increase, and they haven't said it yet, but they're going to say it. Oh, it's for the children. And what's interesting, I've heard,
blame it on the children, blame it on the school, but
I've heard some interesting facts that these elementary schools that have lower enrollment, the parents are noticing an improved education level in their children because of the smaller class size.
I think it's commonly understood that children are a sensitive subject and people will spend money for their children. So it's a little tug at the old heartstrings, meanwhile evading the question of, have you been responsible with your budgeting? Mm-hmm. Do you understand the budget? And when I hear the chairman of the board say in public, on air, say, I'm old school. I don't do that email thing. That's just, I just don't do that. Then that causes me to question his qualifications for voting on a $200 million municipal budget. How can one do that if he's old school to the point he don't use email? So I've got a little bit of some qualms there, you might say, but I don't think it's for lack of intelligence or, for that matter, lack of understanding how to do it. More, there's just enough evasive behavior that I think accountability is good. Just let us know how you voted. Be transparent.
And why you voted. Give us, how about some, what's the first thing you remember in school they taught you for math? If you sit down in the 4th grade and you do a math problem and you do it just like that in your head, your teacher looks at you, well, how'd you get that answer? You have to show your work. Now, you might get to that, show your work. Show us why it makes sense to you to vote like this. At least be honest.
And one thing, one of the speakers,
you want to get him on air?
I don't think any of these people are going to come get on the show.
One thing another speaker mentioned during public comment was that if you add up the county, the state, and the federal money, every student in Franklin County is getting $24,000 spent on them. That is actually really high.
Yeah. Well, honestly, me personally, this is why the school issue doesn't affect me very well. I would personally like to see the entire education system, especially federal education system, abolished and have that trickle down here at the local level. If nothing else, let that $25,000 follow the student instead. Say if that
money comes with strings.
Well, exactly, and that's the problem with it, though, because just think about it in simple terms. If that $25,000 went to me or you or your wife or whoever's got children out there, that would allow one of us to work less, to be at home more with your child, to homeschool them, or give you ability to send them to a private school or to a pod here locally. When you subtract all the pensions, when you subtract all the upkeep, all the electric costs, all the maintenance costs, all the bus costs, all the new, salaries, all these kind of things. Same thing with the VA, subtract it and let the medical follow the patient. Let that patient walk in with a card in his hand and say, the federal government's going to reimburse me. That's a much more efficient system, and it's going to help local economies as well. You know how many people have to drive and how far to get to the local VA around here? It's the only one for, probably 150 miles. So people have to make their way all the way to Salem. Instead, those jobs could be procured in their localities. Doctors could start showing up back there. Nurses would have to be, and you start getting younger people moving to these areas. Stop paying the pensions, stop paying the upkeep of the VA. Same with the school systems.
And one thing that, again, I was kind of disappointed wasn't mentioned was the county wanting to zone the no-zoned area because they've already done the math and they realize that they can bring a significant amount of revenue in with special use permits, with rezoning applications and everything. And that affects, so in the once you get zoned, that affects your setbacks, what kind of business you can have. It's all kinds of things. And how it will be pitched is that, well, it keeps your neighbor from having a landfill, or it keeps your neighbor from not junking up their property. Okay. Well, but what about personal property rights?
Well, that's my thing. And that's, I went in here and spoke a little earlier, and that was my big gripes is, as a woman had to throw herself at the mercy of this board for 15 minutes, begging and begging so she could essentially rent her property out as an Airbnb. Look, it's your own personal property. You should be able to do what you want. Well, now I say within limitations, but those limitations should be understood by neighbors, not some bureaucrat or government official that not even in that neighborhood or on that street. You know what I mean?
Well, I sat here on some board of supervisors meetings, and the special use permits were denied because it was in a lake community, and
influence makes a difference. That's why.
And see, that's the reason here on the lake why all the short-term rentals are in Bedford County.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to get a short-term rental in Bedford County. And that's a lot of revenue.
We've talked about this many times on the show before. Simon's brought it up multiple times. All those people are going and spending that money in Bedford, and also going to be spending money at Bedford restaurants. They're going to be going to Bedford hotspot, whatever the case may be, and they're not going to bother coming over here. Maybe some of them might come over towards the lake, but aside from that, you're missing out on an awful lot. So, like you said, they'll paint one picture and it's just a magician trick. Look at this hand while this hand's really the one picking your pocket. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, nobody wants to live next to a landfill. Nobody wants to live next to a prison. Nobody wants to live next to a lot of things. It's the whole NIMBY, not in my backyard. But, personal property at the end of the day should trump all of that. Look, I don't know. It's such a finicky question.
If you can control what your neighbor puts on their property, that means they can control what you put on your property. So for an instance, on the farm, I'm zoned A1. I cannot put a butcher shop on my farm to process my own animals because of zoning.
Which is absurd.
Agreed. I'd have to file for a special use permit. And special use permits are not cheap. They're upwards of $500.
And that's before you even get the official yay or nay on it, correct?
Correct. And there might be additional stipulations. Because you have to pay for the permit, you have to pay for the advertising fees, that's a scheme right there, because the advertising fees means you have to post twice in a local paper.
Well, I mean, there are simpler ways to do this. So say for something like that. Well, if you wanted to put a butcher shop on your property, what is a gripe a neighbor personally may have? They may say, well, some of the, you wash it out of your barn and some of that floats onto
that falls under DEQ. That falls under Department of Environmental Quality. There's regulations on that.
Exactly. So my thing is, if something like it, it's just an example. So if something like that was to happen, then you take it to court with that neighbor and simplify the courts.
Oh, well, you don't get better about zoning? So I cannot grow chickens if they're in a house. If they're confined, I cannot grow chickens because then I'm a commercial chicken farm. Okay. I cannot confine cows because then I'm a commercial feedlot. I cannot confine pigs because then I'm a commercial swine farm, and those are not allowed in my zoning. But thankfully I put them on pasture, so I don't have to do those things. But if I simply house them on a large scale in a barn, I can't do that on A1. The only thing technically, how the county has it written, they basically just want you to grow beef or hay or crops.
Well, yeah, because that's the only things that are, because everything else is essentially more about self-sustainability, chickens, self-sustainability, small crops, sustainability for yourself, everything's tied into everything, it's such a ridiculous system.
And I will say this. So in A1, you cannot do a short-term rental or without a special use permit, but you can do a bed and breakfast. And you also can do a primitive campground.
Huh.
So
basically it's all just.
Oh, there's loopholes. That's what's funny. You start really looking into it. There's all kinds of loopholes in zoning, but then at the same time, there's a reason, farmers do certain things in the non-zoned area and expand their business because they can. They don't fall under zoning.
Huh. Well, so what did you take from today's, I'll say I don't know. I'm a little disappointed the turnout. I'm a little disappointed the amount of people that came up and spoke. I mean, apathy has really overtaken our society.
People with the amount of griping online, well, even here tonight, they had overflow prepared. The board room was 75% full.
If that.
And a lot of people didn't speak, but they came in support. But at the same time, I was very discouraged because people aren't involved in local government. And I believe that the board knows that once this all dies out, they can do whatever they want to.
Yeah.
Because people are lazy.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think it just goes to show you more how social media has turned into real life for some people. And I don't think they've understood quite the realization yet. Because as you stated, we all looked online this past week. We always see it. Everybody's griping. Everybody's about to lose their mind. Everybody's ready to jump ship. And then nobody shows up to speak. Nobody shows up to say anything. It's just kind of mind boggling. It's disappointing. At this point, like, people need to get outside and touch grass. If they're going to gripe online, show up and get in front of them. Because otherwise it doesn't matter. If you're not going to get in that room and make it warmer, if they're going to have to pull their tie back a little bit because the sweat's starting to get to them, then you ain't doing nothing.
Well, and get out and vote, too.
I seen Ronnie mop his head.
I will point out that Mike Carter,
Yep, Mike Carter.
He just said one thing that struck me as unusual, but what he said was prior to him being on the board that he observed treatment that he didn't perceive to be fair from the board to the citizens. So his idea was that if I can't beat you, I can join you and make your life miserable. Christy Cundiff, formerly of Cundiff Trucking, now resides in the Boone District, and I'm going to nominate her as a excellent candidate for the next seat.
The Boone District comes up in 3 years.
Okay.
What's all right?
She's permanent resident. Fairly permanent.
I'm just saying this.
So we got 3 years to work on it. And I try to make that clear to them tonight,
I know some other people that are having their eye on that seat too.
Anybody, any incumbent.
Well, it's like Don Quinn. He only won his election as Union Hall supervisor by a couple hundred votes.
That's all it
And
takes.
I personally like Tommy Cundiff.
Well, and lots of them are running uncontested, and that realistically.
Well, I want to point out that Nick Mitchell sent an email that was posted online that he is in support of zoning Snow Creek.
And we do not want that. So there's someone who needs to receive a number of phone calls and
Snow
Well, I
Creek's
should
a
know
number of
that 15
messages,
minutes ago, I
a
was out
number
there
of
chatting it up
emails,
with him.
Snow Creek's currently unzoned.
Majority of it, yes.
Yeah.
Why
And
would
it-
he want zone?
and keep it that way.
I don't know. There was I saw him next door. A lady sent him an email and he responded. So, and it's basically people don't realize that they want it yet.
Well, that's the comment that I heard is you don't realize how good it is, and we know it's good for you. I'm like, no, that's not how that works.
I don't know how it's good for you. I know when I built my house, the first thing development services said was, you live in an unzoned part of the county. You can build anything you want to build as long as you don't exceed X amount of bedrooms. It's not restricted in that regard.
Also
So,
setbacks.
well, right. And so you can't violate the
It's a-
setbacks if I remember right.
No. In the non-zoned area, there are no setbacks for like agricultural buildings.
Well, for
Agricultural,
residential,
I can
I think
understand.
that there are, or at least they
Yeah.
made us announce the setbacks. Now, whether they would have denied permitting based on that, I don't know the answer to that. Sometimes the authority is taken in the short-term rental discussion that they ultimately approved, but the
on an
lady, I don't
individual
remember her
basis,
name,
which is an absolute disgrace.
first questioned, "Are you in compliance with the septic being pumped effectively?"
She didn't
And
realize that didn't
her
apply.
representative said, "Hey, that's not applicable." Well,
Yeah.
hey, let's make it applicable. Let's just help ourselves to that authority.
I know-
We understand it don't apply to your property, but let's go ahead and make sure you're in compliance with it anyway.
I know some septic guys would be happy with that 5-year.
Oh,
It causes me to wonder
Oh, yeah.
what that board member's specific interest is in septic. At the end, for me, it's a closed
She's
matter.
worried about environmental
well, she's
issues.
Smith Mountain Lake.
However,
Gills Creek.
it's clearly
Yeah.
been stated this site is already in compliance. As a matter of fact, there's not compliance required. So why are we going to then even discuss further compliance with something that don't exist?
Well, that just shows her ultimate philosophy is regulation in the
more-
name of environmental concerns.
Yeah.
Regulation,
Add some more
bureaucratic
regulation.
control, you name it.
Because
We
see,
don't want
people
it.
don't understand that there's state regulations that if your septic overflows and gets into a stream, you get fined. So it's
Farmers understand that.
Oh, yeah.
Your septic overflows, gets in a stream, big fines.
you lose your farm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
guy
I mean,
down
there's laws and things already set up to prevent all this kind of stuff. You know, like I say,
Zoning, we don't need zoning for them to take that control lever, because I've seen how that lever has been manipulated in the
no,
past.
we need to start taking control back. Like they need less and less. We've gotten to a point now where the pendulum needs to swing back in the other direction. We need fewer regulations. That's how it happens. You're not gonna entice people to come to Franklin County, Virginia, by buying up a farm and trying to develop it when you have no idea what you're trying to do. The only way you get companies and places to start investing back in these rural areas is lowering regulations.
What
That's
about
it.
what about that 80 acres they bought in Ferrum?
That's historic. I mean, that goes back.
I mean, they're talking about
years.
developing it. They bought 100 acres over in Gills Creek District for a tree farm, which they're leveraging for loans and stuff.
So when did they become development companies? How did they get the charter to be a development business? You know, why not
I don't
create
think
an atmosphere where private individuals can be developers? That's their job.
I don't think they're mandated to do this.
I don't either.
Well, look, the example is being set across the country, everywhere. I mean, Rocky Mount is doing it with their development.
Yeah.
That's the way it got started.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Other towns done it and made good money. Some towns went broke.
Yeah, but those towns probably hit it at the right time. You know, you got to be able to read the room.
well, like Union Hall, right? Union Hall is zoned for a East Lake, is what they call it, right? It's zoned for a huge commercial box store and area, and they're wanting. That's actually what Don Quinn ran on, was to finish that development because people don't want to drive the 25 minutes to Westlake. That got shut down in 2007 because of the economic downturn, and it still hasn't taken off yet.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Makes you wonder.
Well, I think, Amos, Simon, do y'all have any thoughts about how the night went? Or what's your thoughts on it?
I hope that the board got the point that, look, we're not going to be silent. I'm going to be here to next meeting.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit on the front row.
Yeah, I think moving forward, we got more responsibility. We got to start figuring it out. We've got some plans. We've already been discussing it, off air and things. And hopefully here in the near future, we'll be able to share some of those ideas with some of our community, because we need y'all out here. We need people to show up at your meetings, at local school board.
It all starts at local.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. You start
It
putting
always has.
because if everybody local puts their local officials' feet to the fire, then those local officials aren't going to bend the knee so quick to the people in Richmond.
Hey, Simon, remember that school board where we stayed to 1 a.m.?
Oh.
All it takes is 20 people per hour.
It really does.
But, the liberals figured it out way faster.
We need to start becoming activists.
We are.
Yeah, as much as though that's a
I
dirty
hate that
word.
but we are.
It's a dirty word because then,
Well, the founders were activists. They took back
they
their
were.
rights.
yeah, they were. Whilst I'm wearing a red coat. Thanks, Jeremiah. Touche.
All righty. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off here because I think we've
gonna get kicked out.
we've overstayed our welcome in the place we helped build. By the way, I just want to know, this used to be the Winn-Dixie, and this is where I got my whole my official working career started. Of course, I worked for Darren when I was about 10 or 11. That That was always the case. But my first official job, I came in here and it was a Winn-Dixie back then. I got to say, I liked it better as a Winn-Dixie than I do this building right here. We had a lot of fun. Somewhere in these halls, I committed a lot of damage and had a lot of fun. And got
There was a whole lot of beer carried out the back door and set on the loading ramp.
By somebody, I'm sure, those devious teenagers back in the day. So for everybody,
To be expected.
if you've caught on to this segment, we got a couple segments coming up. We got one with Holland, Perdue, and we've got about a 20-minute segment with an assessor that we just happened to just drag out of the hallways. He was trying to walk down and mind his own business. So he sat down for 25 or 30 minutes. Maybe it'll clear some things up about the assessments for some of you all that have some questions about that.
He was very articulate, so he explained it very well, I thought.
Yeah, so we've got that on here, and we've got the interview from Holland, Perdue coming up for General Cornwallis right here, and Abe Gibson's Abe Lincoln. God, I keep thinking Gibson. Abe Lincoln right here, 7 years ago. Jeremiah,
Our forefathers brought forth upon this continent.
Thank you very much for joining us. And then Joe Long, wherever he ran off to. If you want to become a subscriber, go to patreon.com/getontap for only a dime a stinking day. You can help fund these little ventures like we're doing here today. Every bit helps. So we certainly appreciate everybody out there that does subscribe. We got a bunch of episodes in the hole. We're going to go home and upload onto Patreon. So be looking for those. We got Nick Robertson. We got Spike Cohen. Of course, we got this one. Got some good stuff coming up here in the future. Big thanks to everybody that's chipped in and helped us out. And we'll catch you next time.
What do you mean, am I ready?
Well, we're back. All right, our next guest, we're being joined here by one of the politicians that decided to show up here today, but unfortunately none of the ones inside the boardroom here. We got our friend, the mayor, Holland, Perdue, back on for the first time in a couple months. Last one was Anastasia's. That one went over nicely.
Yes, it did. Along with, I think, a very nice crown and...
Boys, as Chip so eloquently put it, one of the finest selections of bourbon he's seen anywhere in this part of Virginia. So, Holland, welcome back. It's good to see you down here today.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
What are you men are gathering about down here? You gonna come down here and talk about fire trucks?
Well, I heard y'all were going to be here, so I figured I had to come see what was going on.
Well,
has that progressed any further, or is it still stagnant?
So we've discussed the fire truck in meetings. Right now, I mean, I think they've got other issues.
Some pretty significant ones, right?
And so they are definitely handling those. But the fire truck issue is still on the table, and it's something we're still trying to deal with.
That's a bit disappointing.
Well, it seems to be the crowd is starting to file in here a little bit now as well. It looked a little disappointing at first. I was hoping enough people were going to show up to, make the room a little warm. It's chilly in this hallway, but we're starting to get there. The time is such a crazy factor as well. It's a little bit easier, for when you got such a smaller location, but Franklin County, when you're representing the size of this county from every single corner, people are coming in from all over the place. A lot of them work at it. That's a good thing about Rocky Mount. A lot of people live in Rocky Mount, work in Rocky Mount. That's the convenience part of it. But, for the county, it's difficult to make it here by 6 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. So, but they're starting to come in.
Also, when you consider the number of hearings that are being set up behind this is one of the few opportunities, and I think there may be two. There may be a third one in April, where opinions can be further heard, but it's very limited.
However, the adoption of the budget is in latter March, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, so we're only going to be
the window of opportunity to comment.
So
on that budget
today really is the day for voices to be heard. So we'll see who comes through the door. I'm hoping the room will be crowded.
Are you going to be speaking by chance?
I'm not speaking. I've got some other things going on this evening, but I wanted to stop by. One, I knew you guys were going to be here, so I needed to come see what's going on. But the other thing is, look, they've got a lot of tough decisions to make. And so, people can come, they can speak. I hope people show up to speak because, it's important not to just get on the internet and say what you want to say, but you got to get out here.
Can't be a keyboard warrior. Unfortunately, the voice that needs to be heard is in that room.
Yep. And there's a lot of things that, you can come out here, you can express your opinion, you can, be respectful about it. But at the same time, if you don't come out and give your opinion, it's really hard to complain about it later.
And that's actually one of the issues I think the German Baptist community has within Franklin County is that their opinions aren't heard for whatever reason. Their tax dollars are taken, and they choose not to vote. So there's an interesting dynamic in engagement to start with, which I would love to change, but it's not going to happen. That's the reality of it.
Well, what kind of, for anybody that might be listening, what kind of association do you have with the county other than professional? Is there any kind of binding agreements between y'all? Does anybody on the county have any say so over you or when it comes to the town? I'm just kind of curious how that all operates.
So as we've seen, on the internet, the town and the county are not one unit. I'm not the mayor of Franklin County, although we've heard that lately. But no, I mean, look, we're two different entities. So it's like, look, you have Franklin County and you have Rocky Mount, the town of Rocky Mount. Franklin County, we don't have anything to do with the schools. We don't fund the school, or the town of Rocky Mount doesn't do that. The Franklin County does. So that's part of we get a lot of questions. It's very difficult to answer them because that's not my lane.
Well, and that's actually a point of conflict as well, because you would have thought that with a representation on the Board of Supervisors for Rocky Mount, that you would be working a lot closer with the supervisor that represents Rocky Mount, because you should have dual interests. And that to me is something that we should be looking to strive forward for, is that the representative Mike for Rocky Mount, I would have thought would have been working a lot closer with the Rocky Mount municipality and town council. So I'm a bit disappointed to hear that isn't necessarily the case.
Well, I mean, when the SROs came up, we were involved in those discussions. So I don't want to say that, but I mean, right now I think they're talking about two other schools, neither of which are in the town of Rocky Mount.
Right.
So it's very difficult for us to get into that discussion because, once again, my personal opinion
has nothing
to do with it has nothing to do with the town of Rocky Mount. So
yeah.
I don't want to get in someone else's lane that I really have no reason.
Oh, that's fair enough. I mean, I get it. But when it comes to, a $200+ million budget for the county, or whatever that number is, I would have thought there would have been a little bit more.
We don't know what the budget is yet, but taxes will go up. Just not
well, if you sustain taxes and you don't increase taxes in 4 years, you're going to pay the piper somewhere. So we're going to see an increase in tax.
Look, I can tell you, and I believe this, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but at some point, we're at 61 cents now in the county.
Yeah.
It may go down. I promise you, at some point over the next 5 years, we'll be back to 61 cents. You can put it here and we can get it out.
The assessments are not likely to go down.
So even if they go down, we're going to get back there. We're still one of the lowest tax rates in the entire Southwest Virginia. So I understand the concerns, but I mean, lowering it today and raising it over the next 4 years is leaving it the same. And I'm not, look, this is not my lane, but I'm just telling you that these are things that people may not necessarily think about, but people need to understand. Yeah. You're still getting a good
and that's the same argument there is in 4 years when it's state mandated for the reassessment. There is every possibility, because I think we've seen a very inflated assessment, particularly with the residential market, of 50+% increase in property tax. There's every possibility that may decrease. But the game is all about the rates.
So I want to ask Mayor Perdue a question. So as a resident of the county, not necessarily tied to being the mayor, do you feel like Franklin County collects sufficient taxes already to satisfy the needs of the county?
Yes.
Do you think that they collect more than enough to satisfy the needs of the county?
That's a tough question.
But I do think, I think that what I believe is we're still one of the lowest tax rates in Southwest Virginia. And I think if you want to grow as a locality, if you continue to lower the tax down to offset it, you have to also think about growth 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Some of us aren't going to be here then. Yeah. But the difference is if you're only looking for the short term, there's a reason our kids aren't coming back here. There's a reason they're leaving. So no one wants to talk about the hard facts, but the hard facts are it's I mean, we're in a difficult spot, but we still are one of the lowest tax rates per 100 in Southwest Virginia.
Yeah.
So,
And I would like the board to consider keeping that, because it's one of the big attractions for people to come here is the low tax rate. I hate to say it, but no one wants to pay tax.
Predominantly, it's certainly not the only consideration.
No, absolutely
and the
not.
crime rate and the surrounding atmosphere.
well, and the Cardinal News did say, look, I mean, we're an aging population here.
Yeah.
Now, at some point, we've got to get younger people back here. So, I mean, I think that there are things that correlate to make those happen. Whether anybody wants to talk about them, I mean, I think that's a different situation. But again, that's not my lane, and I'm not going to get in that lane. So,
We'll do our best not to give you a gotcha moment. We
you're not gonna
don't
get that.
do that.
No, you're
We
not going to
don't
get
do
that
that.
today.
Well, I know can't stay on here long because you got places to go. We got to go in here. But real quick, is there anything happening here in the near future in Rocky Mount we should be excited about? Anything popping down the
We
lane?
got Crawford and Power at the Harvester.
Well,
Come on,
obviously
man.
yeah, we failed to mention that. That's a
Diamond
big one.
Rio coming to the Harvester.
Harvester's got 4 sold out shows this week. We got
Fantastic.
some good stuff coming. And I think we're going to have some exciting announcements coming up in the near future. So, I think things are going to be good.
So
And-
can we expect you to announce them first on the podcast?
No, I don't know about that now. That's I don't know about that. But I can tell you, keep looking out. Things are going to be good, and I appreciate
Sure
you guys
be.
letting me come on.
Good.
And
Thank
it's
you.
always good to see you guys.
Well,
It's
the
good to
16th
see you, Holland. Appreciate you
16th
coming
president of the United States just walked in here. That's kind
Look
of
at this, Jeff.
There we go.
But anyway, appreciate it. And everybody, you can find Holland on Facebook, I guess, at Holland Perdue for the Mayor of Rocky Mount. Go check that out. And for all the updates coming up, some good stuff happening here soon. We appreciate your time, Holland.
Thank you, sir. Thank
on.
you.
Holland, thank you.
Alrighty, folks, that was the end of our conversation with Mayor Holland Perdue. This last segment here is a random gentleman we just grabbed walking down the hallway that happened to be an assessor, and hopefully he can clear up a few things, a lot of the questions people in the community were having. So just listen closely to this, and hopefully he'll give you some insight on kind of what's going on and what his job is and where they fit into the picture. We certainly hope you appreciate this show and look forward to seeing you next time.
Can I tell them something? Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming here, but I have fun playing with Callie and have fun playing with friends. Have fun. You're all my besties, but I like everybody in this world. Especially no one, but you know who I am, so I love everyone, and the city's alright, everyone's good, we love you, amen, bye, see you another time.
All right, the 3 approaches to praising are the sales, are the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, and the income approach. The cost approach is you do cost accounting on all the parts and pieces of whatever it is you're appraising.
Right.
With a house, probably the main thing is what is it per square foot. Then you look at the different materials that it's made of, the quality of it, all of that. You come up with something called a replacement new. And then you depreciate that. And it all has to do with just how old the house is.
Right.
and in what condition the house is in.
But is this derived from a realtor's statistic?
No, it's derived from, there are companies out there such as Marshall and Swift, which is probably the biggest one. They, every year, frequently, they're checking on prices for lumber, for, everything that goes in.
Into
and
building
they also do
square
that
footage. So you're establishing build cost on a
baseline.
square foot
Exactly,
basis.
build cost.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say. And
I'm a contractor.
okay, so then you know what I mean. You
Right.
have to do that.
But one of the things I question is, say golf courses, like stuff.
Yeah.
Where does the baseline come from?
Well, for example, with say commercial real estate, the cost approach on that, you're basically, you're pricing the structures on the property, and then you have there are different sources of information for some of the, the equipment and machinery. But usually with a real estate appraisal, you're just looking at the improvements, the fixtures,
Right.
things are secured to the land.
Very basic cost analysis.
And it's just buildings. I mean, the equipment and all of that really falls more on personal property. And you could have, there are companies that will tell you how much a tractor, a 5-year-old tractor costs. So that's how you do that.
So you guys basically assessed only land and improvements, but not necessarily.
No, we don't do the personal property.
Found their own.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a golf course called the Waterfront?
No, I don't really. I'm not from here, and it's just golf courses are, they're kind of tough to. It's basically land value. What's the land value of the structures on it?
Okay.
In the land value, you can kind of, you might have to range out far and wide to get the sales that you're looking for, but
because ultimately that's what it's based on. It's competing sales.
Well, the banks, when they use appraisals to establish how much money they're going to loan. That's one of the, basically what, a bank, I was a commercial lender for 20 years, and a bank, its primary focus is on repayment of the loan. It doesn't really care about a lot of the other things. It's just, what are the sources of repayment? And the first is from operations, ongoing operations. The second, if that fails, it goes back into their balance sheet and they start selling things. And the last really source of repayment you want to use is collateral, which means you take your collateral and sell it.
Right.
And that repays the loan.
But the commercial market now is in a tailspin.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
We got a big problem with that. My question to you is they use a software program in which to collate all this information. So it's an algorithm in some degree. Is that
proprietary?
And unfortunately,
to
the algorithm and the company that runs that software, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a California-based company doing these algorithms and providing this base data for you guys to then come in and apply it locally.
Well, actually, the big companies like Marshall and Swift, they actually have local factors.
I hope they do.
Yeah, it's all, that's another thing about appraising is you want to stratify it. You want to match up, similar type properties and then, get your information from that. The second approach is a sales comparison, and it goes hand in hand with the cost approach. So you look at, this is where
that's real life data.
That's real life. Yeah. That's, what are properties selling for?
Yeah.
And, you don't really want to go back more than 18 months, 2 years. And that's only if you have to. This county this year, we've had enough sales here that we only have to go back a year.
Do you think that if you only go back 1 year, considering that since 2021, we've had an artificially enhanced real estate market, do you think in fairness that we should only go back 1 year because it's inflated that much within the last?
I mean, we go back. The closer you are to your appraisal date, the closer the sale is to your appraisal date, the more information it's going to give you.
Sure.
Because what we're doing is it's just like a stock or, a commodity. You're marking the asset to the market.
Do you, what was there consideration giving to it being a 4-year assessment once per 4 years?
That's
do you take
state law? I think what, you're trying to
what would you take an average then of the previous 4 years or only go back 1 year?
No, you go back.
You've got to be current.
So
this is the problem. You have to be current.
Yeah, you want to be current. And, you can appraise every month if you want. You could assess every month if you wanted to.
Sure.
Or every year if you wanted to.
Well, no, the state obligation is every 4.
Yeah.
So we're caught in that cycle, however it falls, plus or minus the market. We're caught.
Where you live?
Well, I live in Lynchburg now, but I grew
Well,
up in
ain't
South
shit.
Carolina. So
Well, that's even better. It's warmer down there.
I know
We got a good friend.
I'll take South Carolina over Lynchburg any day of the week, probably.
We got a good friend.
Yeah, I miss it.
I understand.
Runs a couple, one's YATP from Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. That's a party town.
Well, he ain't a party boy. I mean,
It's not reflective of the rest of South Carolina
it's
necessarily.
warmer down there.
Oh, it is.
Oh,
man.
I told my
It's-
wife a bunch.
It's
If I move, I'm moving south.
It's a subtropical down there. You know,
But
you
it's
got
a beautiful
palm
country.
trees.
But the humidity's the one thing at a certain time of year, the further south you go, the worse that damn humidity gets. And I'm sorry.
It ain't so much the damn
I've lived enough
humidity,
in
but last time I
Louisiana
was
to
down in
figure this
Columbia, a
out.
damn mosquito picked me up moving
Well,
to the other side of town.
listen, the state bird of Louisiana is
A
the mosquito.
Now, that should be Minnesota, not Louisiana.
Well, I mean,
Yes, ma'am. Come on, join us. Come here.
you know you want to.
Well, I mean, this is fun.
Well, what do you guys? I mean, what's your podcast?
The Appalachian Podcast.
Billy, this
is
is where Billy steps in and tells
we're
you.
like Hillbilly Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, I'm a big podcast
Are you?
or a big YouTube. You guys on YouTube?
You can get our shows on YouTube, but we're in the works of getting cameras, and finally we got to take that next step.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain threshold, either stay here and tread water forever, or you do the camera thing, because everybody's all about the clips and everything these days in order to grow. And so camera soon, but no, we're still audio only for the moment.
Okay.
For the short term.
Basically,
But you can get us on YouTube, all of our, so you can
I grew
listen
up with
there.
an Amish.
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously he's from England.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
And he's just more wearing Hillbilly. But 15 years ago they moved here. I met we just kind of all got together. I mean, we're so from different corners.
Oh,
but we
I
all
know.
have common-
Yeah.
I mean, home. I mean, we love it here.
Yeah.
The people are awesome.
The people really are.
And, we started this to give a voice to people, and it's took off. It's been fun.
Well, good. I'm
And,
glad. That's
Is there? Here's a question for you, because
the whole assessment. I mean, all this assessment, because really, I don't think that the average person in this county was ever informed.
well,
and then all of a sudden,
it's
y'all's fault.
well, the whole assessment thing. There's a body of knowledge around it. There are degrees around it, and there's if people really want to learn about assessments, there's something called the International Association of Assessing Officers, and they teach courses. There really are methods, and it's become very
you
rich.
have to apply a method, and the issue that I'm seeing with the current method, is that it appears slightly arbitrary, in so much as we're dealing with possibly a software company, an algorithm based.
Well, yeah, but the software companies, and probably, in my opinion, the best one is CoreLogic's. What is that thing called? CoreLogic makes it ProVal.
Yeah.
And what it does is okay. I told you about the two approaches, the cost.
Yeah.
Most residential stuff, unless you're renting the property, you're not going to use the income approach. But when you're doing commercial properties, you use the income approach.
And there's that grey land, of it's crossover between, is it residential or if it's providing income such as VRBOs, etc. You're in the middle ground.
Gosh, take care, man. Good to meet you.
I'll be back in.
But yeah, that's true. But if it's producing income somehow,
It's another animal.
But some of the problem there is how do you appraise a business
Yeah.
without financial statements?
Right,
And you're
and
not
there's
going
your
to always
problem.
get that.
There's your problem.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say, now I'm being slightly cynical, so forgive me for being cynical.
He didn't sound very apologetic saying that, did he?
Well, it wasn't heartfelt.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, it wasn't
Hey, listen,
heartfelt.
My last name is Hull. My great grandfather came over from England, so I'm
He
Oh,
gets
God.
it.
We're
I'm sorry.
He gets the cynicism. So is it
Fucking lot of
the
liveys.
issue that I say, when I say is everything is it arbitrary? to a degree it is, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But it's also, the reason I say arbitrary, it's also based on a lot of realtor input. So we're talking about sales figures, and I may not have the best opinion of realtors because they're always looking to drive the price.
I don't use realtors. We don't use realtors. We use
Excellent.
We use the data that the counties give us.
Strictly data.
Yeah. It's what, after you gather the data out there, then we compile it. We run it through a spreadsheet that gives you some ratios. It's called ratio analysis.
Okay.
And what it does is there are 3 metrics now. It's going to get more and more as the future moves.
Of course it is, because it needs to be more tuned in. You've got to dial it in.
You get the median asset. It's the assessment divided by the sale.
Right.
You get the median ratio of, all these asset sale pairs, the things when you go out and find the asset or the appraisal value after we figure them out for every property, and then, divide it by the sales property, but you're only looking at the sales, the valid sales for the last year. Then so you've got this median value. And then what you look at is how closely you get kind of a bell curve. Well, how narrow is that curve? That's called a coefficient of variation. And then you want to look at, if you want to make sure that everything's balanced, and that's called a price related distribution. You don't want the high end paying a disproportionate share of taxes or the low end paying a disproportionate share.
I'll come on to that because the lake obviously commands a very different assessment.
Yeah.
But what we don't want to do with lake assessments is have that trickle over and bleed over to falsely elevate.
Well, see, this is all statistics.
Absolutely.
There's very little opinion. The opinion comes into really in the cost approach, where you have to determine, what the grade is, and you have to determine what the depreciation is.
Right.
Those are relatively subjective. But you can still smooth a lot of this out with statistics. And it's funny, if you went back and look at the book called The Fundamentals of Mass Assessment, back about 30 years ago, it's just works. Now it's basically a statistics book.
Right.
And, it's deep into statistics, but you don't want to make it that bad, because a lot of tax offices don't do that. They don't have the background, the math background, statistics background to do that. But if you want to defend yourself, if someone's saying, "Oh, you're taxing the rich more," you run that one thing, you go, "No, we're not. We're close to 1." That means everybody's getting hit fairly.
So that methodology is interesting.
So I want to throw a curveball question at you. So there's a golf course, country club called the Waterfront at Smith Mountain Lake. And so their previous assessment was $1.9 million and change for a little over 100 acres of land, including a golf course, country club, and several buildings. I think about 104 units of commercial residential condos, if you will. So their assessment resulted in an increased assessment of about 8%, as opposed to a countywide average of approximately 55%. Do you have any insight into why that would be such a disproportionately offset number? And I asked that question of the commissioner, Margaret Torrance, and she said she didn't know. However, there was various methodologies used to arrive at the assessed value, and her best guess was that it was off of a, maybe correct me here, but a cost basis, I think is what she called it, that had more to do with the revenue produced of that facility.
Well, that would be an income.
Okay, there you go.
So now we're talking about commercial and that gray area.
Well, it's, you need to know what the net income is. I mean, valuation, I mean, has a simple formula, and it's all based on the time value of money.
Hey.
And a value is equal to the revenue divided by the hurdle rate or interest rate.
Have you found that corporations, if you will, I'm going to name the Waterfront Realty as being the owners of that facility? Are you able to gather, and understandably, thank you, sir. You have some opposition, and on behalf of our fellow citizens, I apologize for anybody that's making threats to you, because that's not necessary, nor is it warranted. But I don't think they're worth taking too seriously.
No, I don't take them seriously.
But in the interest of using a cost basis approach to assessing a property like the waterfront, do you find that they're very forthcoming with their financial information?
I haven't worked with these guys around here. Now, I've done many other counties.
Sure.
And no, they're not. I mean, they're just,
it's the name of the game.
The way they look at it, it's nobody's business,
Well,
but
it could be argued
also,
either way, I'm sure.
What could happen also is, they go through the assessment process.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, maybe I should have helped that.
Well, that's so.
I should have, and we're always willing to take a look at it, but really, a lot of these we do smaller counties. They really don't have that much commercial stuff in them compared to bigger cities.
I think our big issue here is the residential increase, which everyone is viewing very negatively.
Oh, it's
and rightly so. But when the thing is, it's a double-edged sword. So the assessment actually can in fact be perceived, in my opinion, as a bit of a red herring, because it's the tax rate that you apply subsequently is in fact the critical element to, are you net tax neutral? Or are we going somewhere where we need to be dipping into our pockets and paying more?
Well, Virginia's got the kind of the strong suggestion of not increasing the tax amount more than,
the 1%.
1%.
The problem is when you don't take advantage of that guideline of a 1% increase, which to me is, I think that's pretty fair. So when you don't take advantage of that, and then when the state gets involved and sees some of the spreadsheets and accounting data that we're holding X amount in deposits, and now we haven't had a tax increase, that gives the state an open door to swing around and say, well, you're actually fairly wealthy. We can now reduce
this is an area
the state funding.
We just value. And when you
and
get
that's
into that,
raw data.
Yeah, when you get into that, I don't really have.
Right.
Know
so you're not involved in that.
Everybody does it differently.
It starts to get political after.
Exactly.
Dollars and cents or black and white.
I tell people is that there's only one way to do appraisals, and that's to do them right, because somebody's getting hurt one way or the. If you want to be right in the middle.
Well,
but then the tax rate is the political thing.
That's
if we don't get involved,
and wisely so, I may add.
I don't even want to.
Would you say that Wampler, as a vendor, a contracted vendor for the county, my understanding typically has been, like, if I were interested in buying a house or selling a house, and I may wish to get an appraisal of that property, that it may be wise to get at least 2, maybe 3 different appraisals to establish the median. But all things being equal, an appraisal typically is going to be close. I mean, they might be off by a couple thousand on a couple $100,000 house, but they're very close.
Well, they usually are. Let me make one statement about that. There are really 2 types of appraisals. One is the one house or one-off appraisals. And they're the best. That's when you hire an appraiser to appraise your asset. They go in the house. We don't go in houses. We don't know what's going on in them.
Mm-hmm.
And, we ask questions, but we never know. I mean, we're not allowed in houses.
Okay.
So we do what's called a mass appraisal.
Okay.
And that's, I would never recommend, if you're going to buy or sell a property, I wouldn't recommend it off of the mass appraised.
But
They're close now. They're close. But,
There's too many other factors can influence it one way or the other.
We're looking at every sale in the county.
Yeah.
And we're stratifying it. A one-off appraisal is just looking at that house, going out and finding the most like houses where you get 3 or 4 sales, and then adjusting it all to come up with a value. So it's very specific to that property. Ours is the whole county. And, when you're looking at medians and averages and all of that, it's different.
Well, in the respect that my house might have 4 bedrooms, so 3 of my neighbors may have a 4-bedroom house, but their homes might be worth $600,000. Mine might be worth $400 on an independent appraisal.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, they appear to be similarly situated. So a mass appraisal would tend to lean more that direction to take not exactly one size fits all, but it does have to categorize, any group of dwellings that have sold on the market.
Yeah.
So, and understandably, it's difficult then if you don't have the luxury of enough time or the resources to go in one house at a time and say, well, let's see, y'all have custom cabinetry or, that kind of thing to enhance the value. Then you almost have to compare off what was last sold nearby.
Well, that's good. That's, mass appraisal was developed to help municipalities, and there's no way you could afford to do real individual appraisals.
Sure.
On, there's 45,000 properties or something here. It's got to be done on a mass basis.
I think we've got to be sympathetic to that. I understand that.
No judgment there. We really, the basis of what we're hoping to do is just educate, the public as to really what it is, how it works. But because at the end of the day, I don't think any of us want somebody threatening to shoot you for being on the property. You've got a job to do. And I understand, and I appreciate you being.
I thought it was funny.
Right. And so,
I'd have had
a little flexibility goes a long way.
Last time somebody threatened to shoot me, before it was over, he was wanting me to take a bottle of moonshine.
That's Franklin County.
He may have dipped into the bottle of moonshine before he threatened to shoot you.
He came
it's
out
possible.
He came walking out of this shed with deer antlers in his head.
Well,
and the next thing you know,
communication goes a long ways, so
most things can be diffused. But the people are really upset now. I mean, we've had such an increase in values. It's all this money that the government's pouring, and all the fiscal stimulus, mostly. The trillions of dollars that they're printing, and
it doesn't add up, does it? And that becomes a crushing blow to the man in the street.
Right now, I read something this morning that the average income for a family in this country is like $76,000, and the average house now is unaffordable at that income level.
And at that point we've got a problem.
Oh yeah, I've heard about England's got a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
And one of the things that gets I was in banking and I did some residential stuff, mostly commercial, but there's some of were old tried and true ratios. Like you didn't want to loan anybody more than 24% of their gross adjusted income or adjusted gross income, for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And if you use that old thing, then that's 76. You'd have to be somewhere around 120, 150,000 to afford the median house in this country. And, it just, I don't know how it's going to be sustainable. I just have no idea.
Well, it's snowballing out of control. And I think this is where you're seeing the pushback.
Yeah, that's what's going on, and so you really do have to be pretty sensitive to these people.
So,
I'm in the same boat.
Well, it's some of it's just a lack of, because I do think that a lot of the citizens here understand, not rightfully so, but they would understand that the enhanced assessment automatically results in an enhanced tax bill.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily
or
it's not at all the case. It first then has to go through and like you said, the state guidelines calls for a 1% increase overall, so as to render it revenue neutral.
Exactly.
But that's merely a
suggestion.
That's a suggestion, though.
The board meeting is for that purpose.
Yeah, well,
because they decide that.
That's where any changes would happen. Would be
sure,
at the board meeting.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to, if they want to stay on the board, they're probably not going to,
hopefully
if
so.
they don't have to.
Right. And so we hope that they have an ear at least for public opinion, but the general public, I think, realistically, if you have energy to expend in addressing what you feel is unfair, on the face of it, your property being assessed at a higher value than it was 4 years ago is probably understandable, all things being equal.
Yeah,
everything else has went up. But save that energy for where it counts, and that there's decisions that are then made based partially on the assessment, also predominantly upon the county budget, that leads to decisions being made as to what the actual tax levy is.
Yeah.
So in all fairness to people that just have a job to do, my opinion, it's better to save that energy a little bit. And if you have an opinion to share it with the Board of Supervisors. They vote, all of them, on our tax rate. Yes, this reassessment is one piece of information that they use, and that's necessary, and it's required by the state code. So it don't make you the bad guy to have created an assessment, but that's just
it's how the board deals with it.
Well, but that's a topic for a different day, as it were. So I'm just saying that the citizens, hopefully with enough information, and I still don't advocate threats, as it were, but rather to rationally think through. And so the treasurer just stopped by a minute ago, and she said, I shouldn't say treasurer, a lady who worked in the treasurer's office. She said, please, put a shout out to say that we just collect the money here at the treasurer's office. So if you're upset,
they're not the bad guys.
But I'll tell you the same thing I tell everybody else, is that I collect money all day long and I go home broke. And she's right in that, they don't deserve to be abused. They have a job to do. How much money they collect is determined, as a rule, by the Board of Supervisors. The Commissioner of Revenue has some input there, certainly.
And the state has an enormous bearing on it,
Well,
too.
agreed. They have the guidelines to follow. Yeah. So all we can hope for is that while there's guidelines, like he mentioned, about a 1% increase in the tax levy, that the board will honor that and not go 25% as a big favor to the rest of the community. Hey, your assessment went up 55%. We're going to do you a favor and only increase your tax rate to 25%. No, let's go back to the state guideline. It calls for 1% at most year over year. So let's just stick with that and figure out how to get this budget to fit. We might have to lose a little bit of pork in the budget, but then we're in a position where we're, as the spirit of the law and the letter of the law even calls for, rendering the assessment revenue neutral. It should not result in a tax increase at the end of the day.
The systems and things in our society, I'd have to say that, we do this all over North Carolina and Virginia. I would have to say that the whole tax system is designed to be fair. And, it's not, the tax system is not what has caused this issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's the federal government that has caused this issue. That we, as our appraisers, all we want is to get it right.
We're no fans of the federal government, by the way. We're no fans of the federal government.
I will point out, now I want to interrupt you for just a second, because the chairman of the board at the last meeting, which was February the 8th, he said that our state government in Richmond was the problem, and now it's the federal government.
I don't know.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Personally, when I see the trillions of dollars that have been poured out of there to buy votes, but the thing is that seriously, the tax system is pretty well designed to be fair. I mean, you've got 2 layers to go through before your tax bill's finalized. You've got all these people looking at stuff, trying to get it right. Because if we don't get it right and the county gets hurt, we don't get invited back.
I agree.
If we and if we don't get it right and the citizens get hurt, the owners get hurt, we ain't get invited back again. So we have no incentive to do anything.
Well, as a contract vendor, I mean,
Yeah.
you're issued a contract to
I'd be interested.
to follow some guidelines, and really,
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing you say, there's really not a lot of. It's not opinion based in how you arrive at an assessment.
You
You have formulas to follow.
we have formulas. We have, numbers. I mean, we crunch. We're trying to do it as kind of, objectively as we can. And I mean, there are some parts that are subjective, that have a little bit of judgment. But what we try to do is learn the standards, what types of houses, fall into what categories, or classes or grades, what constitutes a average house versus a fair house for depreciation calculations. We try to make ourselves familiar with the standards in the industry, because this is truly as I said, it's a body of knowledge.
Here's and it's not a gotcha question. It really isn't. I'm also intrigued to figure out the fee basis in which you were contracted, because I think that's pertinent as well. I mean, if you're looking for competitive fees, are you where am I going with this? Are you looking
Not England, I hope.
Well, no, absolutely not. But I'm intrigued as to how much your company charged the county for the service.
Yeah, it's a market. I mean, there are a number of companies like ours.
Oh no, I'm sure. I'm
have-
sure. So you've got to be competitive within that market.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm slightly
Well, I'm sure it
interested
was
about
put out
that
to
fee
bid.
structure. Oh, I'm sure
I mean,
it better have
without
been.
bid.
Do you know what the lump sum contract was for
No,
Wampler?
I'm.
Which I mean, it's
our
public
owners-
record, I'm
our
sure.
owners do that stuff. I mean,
Right.
occasionally I'll see them, but I don't know.
Right, it's not
Yeah,
something. I mean, you don't negotiate the contracts,
Gary and
but
Steve do that.
it-
and-
generally the county, I think, is obligated even to present
It's got to be bidded.
an RFP, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you'll have
exactly.
multiple firms. Wampler obviously was the winning firm for this year's reassessment, but it's competitive in that
yes.
either it's normally lowest cost unless there's enhanced value somehow that creates results in a higher cost, but it's better service for whatever reason. So I mean, no complaint there. That as far as I can tell, the state requires the county to do at a minimum every 4 years. And in Franklin County, we outsource the reassessments. There was some talk at the last meeting of the board, well, we should just get our own assessment office. And I don't agree with that at all, because,
Well, you really have to do a cost analysis.
well, and also you have to understand the appearance of the conflict of interest that
There's
creates.
that.
If you have a county controlled entity,
That
doing
becomes
your
actually more
reassessments,
problematic.
then it's much better to take a sealed bid, deliver a contract to a third party that's from somewhere else that comes in and says, hey, for X amount of dollars, we will reassess your entire county. If it's county controlled, then it leaves you wide open to the appearance of impropriety within
that
the
is-
county.
Yeah, but like an objective third party is part of it.
And so
and another thing,
neutral parties are good.
yeah, is we usually you don't want to do one of these assessments for longer than a year.
Mhm.
So you have to just determine how many. I mean, we look at every property.
Because you guys started in 22?
No, we
Lot of-
just started. We started. I think the end of 22. And then
Okay,
we
so I mean,
finished
you've
up. Yeah,
About a year.
yeah.
to-
But we had at times 5-6 people in here
Yeah.
because you don't want to stretch it out, or you're really, you're. An appraisal should be a snapshot in time. It's not it's what is it worth today. Well, you don't want people having. You don't want to spread those values out over years.
Sure.
But if you hired your own staff, to do it once every 4 years, you'd have to hire. Then what do you do with them during the other 3 years? So it's really, each county, when you get municipalities, cities, things like that, they can afford to hire a staff. But in these rural counties, it really is probably more cost effective for them to hire one of the companies.
I would agree with that. I think I want to sidetrack for just a second. So I'm sure you're aware of this. There's an appeal process, or you can call and request a hearing to appeal, or just simply ask questions. It don't have to be an appeal
that's
necessarily.
what we're doing right now.
So one thing that I want to note there is that as a property owner, when calling to schedule those appointments, as far as I can tell, there were 37 remaining available appointments for landowners and they need to make that appointment by tomorrow. Understandably, there's a deadline. So in the event that if I or one of my companies owns multiple properties and they're all taxed separately, they're assessed separately, so on, the costs go lot per lot or property per property. Some of them are not even in the same company name. Then, in fairness to me as a landowner, when scheduling an appeal hearing, would you find it feasible to schedule one appointment per property that I own, or because I happen to own multiples?
Yeah, we don't do that. We schedule each property owner, and if you look out there, the average person's going to have one property.
Sure.
So you're going to get, like one guy brought in probably 15,
right,
property cards today.
Right.
It took me longer, because we had to go through every one. All right. So, but on average, you don't have that happen.
Is there an end time to those appointments? In the interest of conserving time,
we quit at 4:00.
So if that guy comes in with 15 property cards, at the end of his appointment time, is he then done appealing, or
no?
Does he have the ability to run over if needed?
Well, no, he's done with our appeal.
Okay.
Then the next step is the Board of Equalization.
Okay.
That's the second level.
Okay.
And that the property owner will normally get, he gets a notice, she gets a notice.
Sure.
And, then they set up an appointment with the Board of, Board of Equalization to hear that, if they don't like what came with the result of the appeal, they have that extra. And that's what I say. There are multiple layers for a property owner to get fair treatment. That's one of the things that, it's not, we're not the last arbiter of this.
Sure, right.
So it's, there's even stuff beyond that, but, it's really a pretty fair process, or it's intended to be. It's I'm sure.
Well, and it's a multi-step process.
Yeah. So,
I want you to know we're grateful for you stopping and taking the time to talk with us. We have to run and get ready for another.
Well, I need to get
event, but thank you, Mr. Hull.
Well, we can use your name if you want to. If not, we can just say, it's up to you.
About my boss hears it, who knows? He'll probably go, "You said this wrong. You said that wrong." So,
we'll just say the nice assessment man will stop by and give us some information.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Appreciate you.
He didn't signal while changing lanes. They pulled him over, found her cocaine. She said, "I love you. Yes, I love you forevermore." If you tell that policeman that cocaine load is yours, he spent time locked up while she ran around. Everyone knew it, small country town. While he lay rotten, Lord, she was blowing on his door. And the day they released him, another low down woman that a man can't trust. Day they released him, no one was there. Had she forgotten? Did she still care? He called up her mama, Lord, and these words he heard her cry. Lord, that no good daughter of mine spend all your money on cocaine, overdosed and died. Lord, it's ashes to ashes, and you know it's dust to dust. Just another low down woman that a man can't trust. In the spring, one sunny day, my good gal left me, and she went away. Now she's gone, I don't worry, because I'm set